Captain Sisko had a Star Trek DS9 enemy he hated more than Dukat in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Captain Benjamin Sisko's most well-known adversary was Gul Dukat, the cunning and manipulative former leader of Cardassia. Their complex, deeply personal enmity became one of the key driving forces of the series, culminating in a final showdown that felt fitting for two characters locked in a battle of wills. However, despite the many clashes with Dukat, Sisko's true hatred was arguably reserved for someone even more insidious, someone whose betrayal ran far deeper: Michael Eddington. Eddington wasn't a Cardassian, nor was he some galactic warlord hellbent on universal domination. He was a Starfleet officer, one of Sisko's own, and his turn to the Maquis, a rebel group opposing the Federation and Cardassia, cut Sisko in ways that Dukat never could. Their rivalry challenged Sisko's convictions, values, and his belief in the Federation itself, making Eddington not just an adversary, but a personal affront to everything Sisko stood for. The rise of Michael Eddington. When Michael Eddington was introduced, he seemed to be nothing more than a competent and loyal Starfleet officer assigned as the head of security aboard Deep Space Nine. On the surface, Eddington was the epitome of professionalism. He did his job well, following orders and maintaining the rigid structure of Starfleet's hierarchy. But beneath that veneer, Eddington harbored deep discontent with the Federation's policies, particularly its treatment of the Maquis. The Maquis were a splinter group made up of Federation colonists who refused to leave their homes in the demilitarized zone, territory that had been ceded to the Cardassians in a peace treaty. For these colonists, the Federation had abandoned them, handing them over to a brutal regime in the name of diplomacy. While the Federation saw this as a necessary compromise to avoid war, the Maquis saw it as betrayal. Eddington, who sympathized with their cause, gradually found himself aligning with their ideals. What made Eddington's eventual betrayal so poignant was his previous role as a trusted officer in Sisko's command. He wasn't some external enemy or opposing force like Dukat. He was part of Sisko's team, embedded in the very heart of Starfleet's operation. When he defected to the Maquis, it wasn't just an act of rebellion. It was a declaration of ideological war against everything Sisko believed in. For Sisko, this betrayal cut much deeper than anything Dukat could ever do because it came from within his own ranks. The personal nature of betrayal, Sisko's relationship with Dukat, though filled with animosity, always had a certain predictability to it. Dukat was the enemy. He represented Cardassia, oppression, and conquest. Though Dukat tried to manipulate and taunt Sisko, the lines between them were always clear. They were adversaries in a larger conflict, a clash of civilizations. But with Eddington, the stakes were far more personal. Eddington didn't just betray Sisko, he betrayed the Federation, an organization that Sisko had devoted his entire life to serving. In the episode For the Cause, when Eddington is revealed to be a Maquis operative, Sisko is visibly shaken. This isn't the calculated anger he shows toward Dukat. This is personal. The Maquis represented a thorny issue for the Federation, but Sisko had always believed that Starfleet's ideals were fundamentally sound. Eddington's actions, however, called that into question. Worse still, Eddington saw himself as a kind of martyr or freedom fighter, believing that he was standing up against an oppressive and hypocritical Federation. He accused Sisko of being blind to the Federation's imperialism, saying, "You're even worse than the Borg. At least they tell you about their plans for assimilation. You're more insidious, you assimilate people, and they don't even know it." Eddington's words struck at the very core of Sisko's beliefs. Unlike Dukat, who was easy to dismiss as a villain, Eddington's arguments forced Sisko to confront uncomfortable truths about the Federation and its moral compromises. Sisko's obsession. It wasn't long after Eddington's defection that Sisko became obsessed with bringing him to justice. This obsession is most famously illustrated in the episode For the Uniform, where Sisko goes to extreme lengths to capture Eddington, even going so far as to poison a planet's atmosphere with a biogenic weapon. The planet was inhabited by Maquis sympathizers, and Sisko's action forced their evacuation, mirroring a previous tactic Eddington had used against Cardassian colonies. This is arguably one of Sisko's darkest moments in the series, a point where he allowed his personal feelings to override Starfleet protocol and his moral compass. Sisko's pursuit of Eddington wasn't just about catching a criminal, it was about restoring his own sense of righteousness and reclaiming the ideals he felt Eddington had sullied. In many ways, Eddington's betrayal forced Sisko to question the limits of his own principles. How far was he willing to go to uphold the values of the Federation? In hunting down Eddington, Sisko wasn't just pursuing justice. He was grappling with his own inner conflict about the Federation's role in the galaxy and his place within it. The animosity between Sisko and Eddington transcended the tactical or strategic maneuvers typical of Starfleet engagements. It became deeply personal, almost psychological, as Sisko found himself fighting not only against Eddington, but against the idea that the Federation might not be as perfect as he once believed. This is what made Eddington such a dangerous enemy. He didn't just challenge Sisko physically, he challenged him ideologically. Dukat versus Eddington. Different kinds of enemies, Dukat was undeniably a formidable foe. He represented a direct and obvious threat, embodying the dangers of tyranny and domination. His smug arrogance, combined with his manipulative charm, made him a memorable antagonist. But at the end of the day, Dukat was predictable. Sisko always knew where he stood with Dukat, even when the Cardassian leader's actions bordered on madness. Eddington, on the other hand, was a much more personal kind of enemy. Dukat was the kind of adversary Sisko could fight with phasers and starships. But Eddington challenged Sisko's very identity as a Starfleet officer. Dukat might have been Sisko's enemy in a galactic conflict, but Eddington was the enemy of his soul. In the end, Sisko's hatred for Eddington ran deeper because it was rooted in betrayal. While Dukat represented an external threat, Eddington represented an internal crisis, one that forced Sisko to confront the darkest aspects of his own beliefs. Eddington's defection wasn't just a tactical problem to solve, it was a wound that struck at the heart of who Sisko was and what he stood for. His eventual capture of Eddington may have brought him closure, but it came at the cost of challenging everything Sisko believed about duty, loyalty, and the Federation itself. Conclusion: while Gul Dukat is often remembered as Captain Sisko's most iconic antagonist in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Michael Eddington was the enemy who truly got under Sisko's skin. Eddington's betrayal wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. Unlike Dukat, who was always the external enemy, Eddington was one of Sisko's own, a Starfleet officer who turned against the Federation and forced Sisko to question the very ideals he had sworn to uphold. Their conflict wasn't just about capturing a fugitive, it was about preserving the integrity of the Federation and, more importantly, Sisko's belief in it. That's why, in many ways, Sisko hated Eddington more than Dukat, because Eddington wasn't just an enemy of the Federation, he was an enemy of Sisko's own conscience. Deep Space Nine, Michael Eddington was the enemy who truly got under Sisko's skin. Eddington's betrayal wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. Unlike Dukat, who was always the external enemy, Eddington was one of Sisko's own, a Starfleet officer who turned against the Federation and forced Sisko to question the very ideals he had sworn to uphold. Their conflict wasn't just about capturing a fugitive, it was about preserving the integrity of the Federation and, more importantly, Sisko's belief in it. That's why, in many ways, Sisko hated Eddington more than Dukat, because Eddington wasn't just an enemy of the Federation, he was an enemy of Sisko's own conscience. Deep Space Nine, Michael Eddington was the enemy who truly got under Sisko's skin. Eddington's betrayal wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. Unlike Dukat, who was always the external enemy, Eddington was one of Sisko's own, a Starfleet officer who turned against the Federation and forced Sisko to question the very ideals he had sworn to uphold. Their conflict wasn't just about capturing a fugitive,